Welcome to Pensare Basketball Live. Let us pray. We have no more leg. This is take 2, and hopefully I'm no longer leggy. New studio setup, and on that mark, ahead of Toronto's game against Dallas tomorrow, I wanted to take a look at the quarterly reviews. So this is going to be like a report card, just like going back to school. There's going to be some surprising A's. I don't think that these report cards are necessarily going to match your expectations. Probably there are some players that you think are going to get straight Fs, and they're not. We're going to look at the offense, defense, intangibles, and the overall. Armin saying, caught your stream on playback, Rob. Well, guess what? I'm going to be on playback a lot more, and if I get used to it, maybe you'll start seeing Pensare Basketball on playback, and wouldn't that be cool? Wouldn't it be great? Armin saying, camera looks so great. Yo, I'm so happy to hear that. Much better. I want to say before we even start, I hate taking the detour before we start because people click away, but I just want to say thank you to this community. You guys have supported us. You got us a proper camera. You got us a proper computer. I will... Hambo saying Davion questionable for tomorrow. That's too bad. Looking smooth and clear now. I'm so happy. I'm so happy to hear that. Okay, so, to those of you who don't know, we've been running this podcast for 3 years off a 2011 iMac. That is crazy when you consider the advances in technology pretty much go like technology gets 50% better every single year. So the fact that we've been running off a 2011 iMac is my own stubbornness and my own, lack of investment into this podcast. But thank you. The lights, the camera, the computer, everything has been provided by you guys. So this is your podcast. And towards the end of this live, we're going to reiterate why we do this. What is the purpose of Pensare Basketball? What service do we, or what purpose do we serve in the Raptors space? But right now, our purpose is to evaluate all the players on the Toronto Raptors. Again, offense, defense, intangibles, and we'll talk about it. We'll talk about some stats. We'll talk about who these players are. But first, let's get to it. And this is the per 100 possessions. And, two numbers that keep sticking out to me, at least, are the effective field goal percentage for Ochai Agbaji and Jameson Battle. That is nuts, right? 64.3%, 63.4% for Jameson Battle. That is great. That is really awesome. Scottie Barnes posting career highs across the board, 30.3 points per game. 12.5 rebounds, 10.4 assists. His load as a playmaker, he's number one on the team in terms of assists per 100, and it's not that close. Number one on the team in terms of field goal attempts per 100 shouldn't be all that shocking if you watch him play this year, and that's Immanuel Quickley. I do think IQ is going to have a big bounce back, but 38% field goal percentage, 37.5 3-point percentage has not been up to expectation for the Raptors. Okay. Asking, are you giving an incompletes for guys like IQ? Nope, there will be no incompletes. There won't even be an incomplete for Rishwawn Shemesh. I'm lagging a little bit again. I have no idea why. We'll figure this out before tomorrow. But moving on. In terms of the advanced stats, I sorted it out by value replacement from highest to lowest. Should be surprising to absolutely no one. To those who don't understand value replacement, it is a derivative of box plus minus. Effectively, if you are very good in terms of box plus minus and you play a lot of minutes, you're going to have a really high value replacement. And if you're really bad in terms of box plus minus and you play a lot of minutes, then you're going to have a very low value of a replacement. So it's no surprise that Scottie Barnes leads the team in value of a replacement despite only playing 12 games. And it's no surprise that Davion Mitchell is the worst on the team in terms of value of a replacement. It is a little surprising at just how bad Jamal Shead and Jakob Poeltl have been in terms of the advanced analytics, but we'll definitely give a little bit of a sliding grace to rookies in general. But there's a couple of rookies that we don't need to give any grace to because they have been goddamn amazing. So let's start out with, let's see who we're starting out with. We're starting out with Scottie Barnes. Okay, we got to start out with Scottie. And Scottie has definitely been the Toronto Raptors' best player, no matter how you slice it. If you have issues with his scoring not being, efficient enough right now, he's taking a lot of threes. He's jacking up a lot of threes, but he has been a breath of fresh air for the Raptors' defense. He has been, for the most part, very, very positive on that end. There have been a couple of sloppy quarters. There have been a couple of, there have been a lot of plays where you can just pick at and say, is he gassed? He's not really getting back on defense. There's stuff like that. But overall, his net contribution on both ends has been overwhelmingly positive. I think his playmaking has taken another step. I think some of his shot making and how he's scoring is the most interesting thing about it. Overall, the intangibles. What are intangibles? I think intangibles are all the stuff that don't really qualify as offense or defense, even though they help your offense and defense. Communication, help defense, things of that nature. That can go into defense, but the intangibles are like your leadership, your stability, your consistency, your ability to influence your teammates, you could say offense is definitely like how many assists you get, but maybe some of the intangibles are like how you get those assists. Maybe fourth quarter closing, clutch performance, things of that nature can be intangible. So overall, Scottie Barnes gets an A minus. I think that's a fair grade for Scottie. Let's go backwards here. Okay, next up, Gradey Dick. Gradey has been one of the most improved players in the league, and I really do think that it was criminal that he did not end up on the ESPN, 25 under 25, because I do think that he has flashed a lot more at this point. I would not trade him 1-for-1 for Jalen Green right now. I think that he is Mark Sokowski saying Charles Barkley called Scottie Barnes one of the best players in the world that no one sees. Yep, absolutely. And Jaden's saying you're lagging. Yeah, I know I am. Yeah, maybe I'll be lagging less when I get these things off the screen. I have no idea. I'll have to figure this out. Nevertheless, I think Gradey has been very spectacular offensively. The way he's been guarded, his overall, let's just say like how he's being guarded, his shot diet, his movement, how much he's moving around the court in general. I think his effort on defense has been commendable, but I do think that there are significant limitations to how well Gradey will be able to perform defensively overall. Like, can he be a plus defender at some point? I think I'll take competent. In terms of the intangibles, it is all that stuff that we talk about, right? It is, how much he moves. It's how much his movement creates openings, even when he's not the one scoring and he's not the one assisting. Really, it is how much his movement is creating openings for his teammates. And I do believe that he creates. Isaac Turner said it started lagging when you went out of full screen for your camera. Yeah, I noticed that. Overall, the intangibles, yeah, they've been great. And overall, we give Gradey a B plus. I don't think that this warrants a lot. I don't think this is all that surprising. He has just been, and I do want to say that these grades are not like all equal. Obviously, a player like Jameson Battle has not necessarily been better than Gradey Dick, but he is, relative to expectation, performing significantly better than Gradey Dick. And I just want to say that Jameson Battle has been one of my big surprises. He has been consistent. He has been almost like a blankie for Darko Rajaković to go to when things are getting a little bit tough for the Toronto Raptors. He's been phenomenal. A plus on offense, a B on defense is probably a little bit generous, but what were you expecting from Jameson Battle? I think he's doing his role defensively very well. He competes on that end. He usually is not late on his assignments. He's very focused. The intangibles, that's all the space that he's creating for his teammates. And those teammates specifically need wide driving angles, and defenses are paying attention to him. He is not open like ever. And that's a stark contrast from players like Chris Boucher and Davion Mitchell, who are almost always open. Teams know that if you leave Jameson Battle open, he's going to make you pay. And he's not hesitant about pulling them. And I just think that he has been a real diamond in the rough for the Toronto Raptors. So his overall grade matches Scottie Barnes, A minus. Okay, next up, is it a positive grade or a negative grade? It's a bit of a mixed grade, right? And then that's Jakob Poeltl, right? So the spurts and the glimpses offensively and defensively have been phenomenal. The overall impact has not, right? The percentages are abysmal. I think he's shooting 17% from three. He's a much better shooter than that, right? But he's had moments. He's had games. The first game that he started, I mean, what did he average? 14 points, 11 rebounds, 5 assists. That was a great game, right? There have been moments in the G League which have been phenomenal. And yes, G League play is factoring into my grading here. Intangibles have been a little bit less, impressive, right? There have been a lot of miscommunications defensively. There's a lot of growing to do at this point for Jakob Poeltl, and I do think that he needs to get a hell of a lot better on that end. Overall, it's a C plus. Right? Has he been one of the 5 to 10 best rookies? No, he hasn't been. Not yet. He's had multiple injuries. He missed training camp. So it is if I could give it an incomplete, I would. But, he's clearly in the rotation. He was the first guy off the bench against the OKC Thunder yesterday. And clearly Darko believes in him and the Raptors believe in him, and they should, because he has flashed incredible potential. The way he navigates screens, his length, the way he attacks the glass, even yesterday in a game that was very so-so. Yeah, and I watched it live. You could see his activity on the glass. You could see how he just gets the ball. And those are extra possessions, whether it's an offensive glass, defensive glass. He's contributing on that end, and I believe that aids his positional versatility, because again, when you can get rebounds from your guards, that's usually very, very positive, because a lot of teams don't get rebounds from their guards. So overall, a C+ for Jakob Poeltl, and I expect when we get to the halfway mark, it's going to be a hell of a lot better. Now, Davion Mitchell. Now, some people are very, very exhausted of our Davion content, and I just want to quickly share with you why there has been so much Davion content. Okay, hang on one sec. Let me try to pull this off and let me see if I get less laggy. Nope, still laggy. Oh, I do get less laggy. So is it the video that's making it laggy? That is interesting, because I'm not laggy here, but I was laggy before. Huh, that's weird. Maybe it's because the video is so high quality. I don't know. Should have gotten a lower quality video. Anyways, it's good to know that I'm not laggy now. Anyways, I want to show you all this little clip of Louis Zatzman and Samson Folk. Now, I alluded to the fact
more than like a more,
and I didn't share what was said on the podcast, but I do want to share this. Okay, so this is what was said, and I hope y'all can hear this. Okay, and I just want to let y'all know why there's been so much Davion content. It's because of this.
More than minimum, more than like a rookie, but something like 7-8 million a year might be friendly for the team. Who knows if Davion would take something like that? He might get a little bit more money elsewhere, but I think there's probably a happy medium somewhere below 10.
Okay, below 10. I think he probably tries to get closer to like 12. But then again, like how free agency went this past off season.
Gary just got the minimum. More than minimum.
Okay, so that is a very big part of it. This video right here was also a very, very big part of it, because I simply don't agree, and I don't think that's true. The article in Forbes by Esfandar Barhaney was also a really big part of it. So effectively, I'm responding. Okay. Now you can say it's not great to be reactionary about things, and I understand that. But overall, I wanted to present the other side of the story, just like I wanted to present the other side of the story when people started capping that Pascal was a top 5 player, top 7 player, just like I wanted to present the other side of the story when people said Gary Trent Jr. was a great defender. I do think that it's very, very important, at least for me, to make sure that we present the full picture. And if everybody else is going left and I feel we've gone too far left, then I'll just start going very far right. I derive no pleasure at all from talking about Davion Mitchell, but let's talk about him anyway. Okay. Now, if the narrative around Media Land had been Davion Mitchell is a fine third string backup point guard who has been salary dumped in a trade from the Sacramento Kings, and therefore he is, performing as expected, then there would be absolutely no kerfuffle and no coverage from me, and I would just accept it as it is. However, that's not the commentary on Davion. The commentary has been that he is a sixth man, that he is a very competent, backup guard, that he's the best backup guard the Raptors have had in years, which is not really saying much, but okay, cool. You want to say that? That's cool. And overall, I think I just want to point out the full picture. I want to paint the full picture, because if everybody is, reading Forbes and Star and whatever, then we get a very incomplete picture. Just like we got a very incomplete picture of the Raptors are not a selfish team. Fred VanVleet is an all-star who can do no wrong, etc. So I do believe that Pensare Basketball offers balance, and I've always believed in that. And if it gets us unsubs and it gets us a lot of people angry at us, that's okay, because the balance is the important thing here. Overall, offensively, I don't know how you can do anything less than an F. Okay, that's just me being honest. And I'll show you some stats. I'll show you some stats that'll back that up, but it is bad. You might want to close your eyes for this one. Okay, so overall, these are the stats. Okay, Davion Mitchell over the last 4 games is averaging 14.3% from 3, 26.5% from the field. He is averaging 30. I wish 30. Wow. 3.7 points per game, 3.3 assists, 1.3 rebounds per game. I did not include the turnovers. 24 minutes a game. You just simply cannot get that kind of production from a point guard in the NBA. The box plus minus in those games, in those 6 games, has been overwhelmingly negative. His best game with a negative 6.5 box plus minus. I'm gonna tell you right now, if you're a guard in the NBA that has a negative 6 box plus minus at the end of the season, you're pretty much on Europe watch, pretty much the entire year. Okay. And if you're wondering, Rob, is he getting better? Well, no, he's not, because the numbers on the right show his numbers year 1, year 2, year 3, year 4. This is the first 3 years were with the Kings in a brilliant spacing offense in which a lot of players have developed. Keegan Murray has developed. Keon Ellis has developed. De'Aaron Fox has developed. There's a lot of players there who have developed. Tyrese Halliburton developed technically. So you take a look at all those players and you say, okay, this just might not be an NBA player. But the box plus minus going the other way right now, going from negative 3.8 to negative 2.8 to negative 3.4 to negative 5.2 this year, this is not an encouraging sign. Okay, I just want to say that out there. Like, you don't necessarily need to see these numbers rise in some sort of linear fashion, but you do want to see some sort of progression over the first 4 years. He is an older rookie. So guys like Stanley Johnson, who did get like 8 years in the NBA despite not being great players, one, were much, much higher picked players and just generally ranked players than Davion, who kind of rose up draft boards late. Number 2, they were younger. And number 3, they were better. Stanley Johnson, for those who may, say like Stanley wasn't great. I don't think you want to see Stanley Johnson's final year in the NBA versus Davion's final year in the NBA or this year. It's night and day. Stanley was much better, right? So again, you can take issue with it. Stanley Johnson was, I think an 8th overall pick by the Pistons. He shut down Kawhi Leonard. He was very athletic. He was an athletic specimen. He participated in a lot of good minutes and had a lot of potential, that dreaded P word, potential, but it didn't materialize into very much. And yeah, I guess I wanted to just make the case that, I do think that Davion provides something. And the thing that he provides isn't so easy to quantify, and that's the defense, right? His pressure defense has been a huge part of why the Raptors are able to pick up so high. It's been disruptive to other guards. You can see that they're bothered by it. Sometimes they'll get off the ball, and I think that's been very good. So I'm going to give him a B, even though I think his off-ball awareness is sometimes terrible. He's getting a little bit better at it, and I think that's important. The intangibles, he gets a C. He gets a C on intangibles because I think that he generally provides a lot of good things for the Raptors. Number 1, he's intense. He's a team-first guy. He's not selfish. He doesn't take a lot of stupid shots, right? And again, we've seen a lot of point guards take a lot of stupid shots. And, case in point, today we were watching the game on playback and Gabe Vincent took a really crazy shot for the Lakers, which pretty much sunk them. So again, you like guys who are low usage, but not this low usage. You can't be passing up wide open shots, right? You got to be able to hit shots. And to some extent in the NBA, it doesn't matter how good you are defensively. It doesn't matter how good a rebounder you are. Like Reggie Evans was a great rebounder. Might have been a generational rebounder. Didn't cut it very, very long term after, his Raptors years here. Like, again, you got to be able to do more than just one thing. And Davion does one thing really well. And yeah, I think the intangibles is also part of, like his mentorship role with Jamal Shead. I think the fact that he is a highly ranked lottery pick and a ex-NBA, ex-national champion and a very highly regarded player means a lot to guys like Jamal Shead and Jacoby Walter, who might, even look up to him and maybe get some sort of inspiration from the juice that he plays with. So overall, a D+ for Davion Mitchell. And I certainly hope that, he'll shoot a little bit better because, again, the 3-point percentage, 31.6, 32, 36. I mean, he's shooting 26 now. If he could shoot 10% better, right? And we've seen this with Darko. Like, we've seen players get better. We've seen Ochai get a little bit better. So maybe, just maybe, Davion will be one of these Darko miracles. I don't think that's going to happen, though. I'm telling you right now, I don't necessarily think, I wouldn't hold my breath on it, right? Okay, next up, Chris Boucher, man. Ooh. Offense, D+. I just really hate his decision making. He has some very, very good games. And I know that there are some very big Chris Boucher fans in this fan club. So, even in our community, there's some people who really admire his hustle. And I get it. I definitely do. But, it's like sometimes players are too high consequence and too high variance. And he's one of those players that's a little too high consequence and too high variance for me. I think his defense is highly overrated. He is often late on switches. He is often lost in the team scheme, but when he does something, it's always spectacular, right? Whether he does something offensively or defensively, it's always spectacular with Chris Boucher. So you say like, cool, right? But the overall prognosis here is that he's going to be a minimum guy next year. I'm very firm on the fact that unless the Raptors extend him some sort of grandfathered offer, or like sorry, not grandfathered offer. What is the term? Some sort of loyalty offer. You know what I mean? Like saying like, okay, you've been with us for this long. Here's $4 million. You don't have to be a minimum guy, but they didn't do that for Gary Trent Jr. And I don't think they're going to do that for Davion. So I think Chris is just, he's been on the trade block for 2 years. They haven't really found a taker. I know he's close with Scottie. I know that he means a lot to a lot of fans, and I get it. I definitely do. I'm trying to be, I think ceremonial is probably the right word, right? So I don't think that he's been very good in terms of the intangibles and in terms of what he provides. Again, it would mean a lot more to me if he wasn't so bad, like 2 out of every 3 games. And that's where we're at right now with Chris Boucher, right? He's been an analytics darling for a very long time. Like he's had some very, very high win share and box plus minus seasons. This year has not been one of those years. Take a look at some of Chris's stats this year, because they have been abysmal bad. Okay. So Chris Boucher over the last 5 games, I mean, we're shooting 11.8% from 3, bro. What are we doing? Last night, he had a 41% usage rate against the OKC Thunder. What are we doing here? Okay. It's bad. It's bad. Okay. 25.7% from the field. You're 6'9". You're basically a run, jump, transition athlete. Like, what are we doing here? Midi pull-ups, pull-up threes. Like, what are we doing? Box plus minus across the last 5 games. Oh, man. Again, I tell you, box plus minus and win shares are 2 stats that have really favored Chris throughout the years. His play style really is very active on the box score. This has not been good. Negative 22, negative 14, negative 1, negative 6.3, negative 15.8. This is possibly the worst stretch of his career. And, I would say that in yesterday's loss against the Thunder, in which he had a negative 16 box plus minus and a 41% usage, like, I'm not saying he cost you the game, because literally there's 100 different things that could have gone wrong with the game, but he didn't help you at all last night. Like, you would have been better off playing Rishwawn Shemesh last night than him. And that just can't be the case. For a 31-year-old vet, that cannot be the case. Okay, Jamal Shead. Now, this is a player that I started out the season very, very, very convinced was going to win out the backup point guard spot, and he hasn't done it yet. Okay, I think the gap between him and Davion is basically tomato at this point. I think Jamal is the more talented player. I don't think necessarily he's the better player right now, because he has the inexperience tag and he's not nearly as physically strong as as Davion Mitchell. So it's a little bit like, what do you do, right? I think Jamal processes the game much better. So that's where I'm at with Jamal. Like, I think he processes the game better. He gets into the paint a little bit better. I think he's a better playmaker. He's shooting much better. Much better. So, he made 2 threes last night, if I'm not mistaken. So that's good. And overall, I think that with a year or 2 under his belt, he will be way better, right? I think you do have a backup point guard. I'm not sure if he's like the permanent backup point guard. Like, I don't know if I feel about him the way maybe Pacers fans feel about TJ McConnell, or Celtics fans feel about Peyton Pritchard. Like, oh my God, keep this guy forever. I do feel like a person like this has some place on your team, right? Just emotionally, as a leader, as, a tone setter for your locker room. I just, very much find myself rooting for this guy. And maybe it's, my own biases coloring it, but I really do like him. And I think that he has generally positive impact in terms of setting up the offense. And he generally makes really good reads. He's just not nearly big enough, talented enough, or refined enough at this point to consistently do what he wants to do out there. So overall, he gets a C+. Okay, next up, we got JMO. And this is the highest grade that I'm going to give today, and that's Jonathan Mogbo. Jonathan Mogbo has been, I know some of y'all are going to not believe this, but he's been my favorite player this year. Now, obviously, Scottie's my favorite player in the entire NBA. Don't get me twisted. But I mean, like, in terms of like all year, the guy that I am absolutely like the most stoked to watch, that's Jonathan Mogbo. Jonathan Mogbo does everything that you need to win on the basketball court. Do you know that he has a higher offensive rebound percentage of 15.3% than any year of Chris Bosh or Marcus Camby's? Not just their rookie years, because both were very good rebounders as rookies, any year of their careers. This guy is a demon on the offensive glass. Do you know that he's shooting 44.4% from three? Hold on. I'll pull these stats up because these stats blew my mind. Hang on one second. I want to be really organized when I say this. Where the hell are we here? Okay. Here are the stats. I'm actually going to pull it up for y'all so you can see it. These are the stats. Okay. Ryan Dunn. Everyone was crediting Ryan Dunn for the massive improvement that he made on his three-point shooting, right? Well, Mogbo is shooting 31.3% from three, while Dunn is shooting 31%. So he has cleared Ryan Dunn, who was shooting threes like a demon. And I don't hear anybody talking about it because he's not doing enough in volume. Fine. Over the last 7 games, Jonathan Mogbo is shooting 44.4% from three. Touch wood. I hope that does not jinx him because, I've been known to jinx players, but I don't, Anyways, he is tied for number 2, okay, with 3 players for value of a replacement in the 2024 draft. And he's played a lot less than some of these other rookies, okay? He's played a lot less minutes than Alex Sarr. He's sometimes getting 10 minutes, 12 minutes. He's getting spot minutes. He's getting DMP CDs, okay? But he is number 2 in the 2024 draft, tied with Zach Edey, Jameson Battle, and himself for 0.2 value of replacement. It is very rare. Very rare. So, for any rookie to be a positive value of replacement, very rare. And maximum throughout a year, they might be 0.2 over a year. The fact that he's 0.2 at this point means he's probably going to be like a 1 value replacement by the end of the year. Crazy. Only 7 rookies have a net positive value replacement. 2 of them are Raptors, and 1 of them is him. Number 5 in win shares among the 2024 class behind Edey, McCain, Messi, and Wells, Jalen Wells. So it's worth noting that McCain and Messi and Wells have played way more minutes. And per box plus minus, he has been the Raptors' second most impactful player after Scottie Barnes this year. Again, so impressive. Relative to expectations, like what you would have been expecting from him coming out of, San Francisco, this is blowing my mind in terms of what he's been able to provide for the Raptors. His defense has been his calling card. It has fueled a lot of his offense. It's fueled a lot of Raptors transition. He has been switchable as hell. He's been multi-positional. He can guard 2s, 1s. We've seen him switch out to Tyrese Maxey and shut him down. We've seen him switch out to, LeBron James. We've seen him switch out to Anthony Edwards. He's guarding anybody and everybody. He takes no prisoners. Okay. He's been awesome. Okay. The defense has been great. The offense is coming. Okay. He makes solid decisions to basketball. He is miles, and I want to say miles ahead of some of his veteran teammates in terms of court mapping and processing the court. You can literally see it. Like last night, I witnessed his career high. That's the only good thing that came out of last night's game. Got to witness one of my favorite players have a career high. And I just thought it was incredible how often he saw what the OKC Thunder were doing and he was pointing it out to someone like Boucher or someone like Fernando, and they didn't see it. You know what I mean? Like that to me is that's the elite stuff. Now he's a great athlete. He's a transition athlete. He's got long arms. He's got big hands. He's very coordinated. He's very bursty. His jump is honestly the best on the team. He takes no time on the gather when he jumps. Like he is literally up in the air with no charge. Do you know what I mean? Like sometimes you need a big boost to get up. He doesn't need no boost to get up. He is a spring. And that ability means he's quick to the basketball. He's going to be quick to jump balls. He's going to be quick to tip passes. He's going to be quick to offensive rebounds. And I think that once you start to really see the game mapping out, you're going to have a top 8 guy on your rotation, and you got him with a 31st overall pick. I feel about as good as 20 games into their rookie seasons, I feel better about Jonathan Mogbo than I did about Pascal Siakam, and it's not close. Okay, it's not that close. So I think that Jonathan Mogbo could be a very, very special find for the Raptors. He might be their best rookie. Another guy who is a very, very special find, and I have very much enjoyed watching his G League performances, is Rishwawn Shemesh. Granted, he's only played 5 minutes of NBA basketball, but the G League basketball has been encouraging. He's averaging nearly 3 blocks a game in the G League. He's had some very monster performances. He's a transition terror. He makes very good reads. Again, a little bit further behind in terms of the intangibles of understanding the game and understanding the nuances of the game. He's only 18 years old. He's the youngest player in the league. I give him a solid C. And honestly, the fanboy in me wanted to just give him an A++++, because you know, again, you're 18 years old. You're the youngest player in the league. You're super inexperienced. You're going out there. Brandon Carlson's off in OKC. You're thrust into the starting rotation, and I don't even think he's doing that badly. I really don't. He's had some stinkers. He's had some good games. The Raptors 905 are not a good team right now, but he's been positive relatively. He tracks the basketball. He works extremely hard. He makes good decisions, and he's getting a little bit better every single game I see him. So I've been very, very excited by what I've seen from Ulrich Shamshay. I think the jump shot will come, man. The mechanics are fine. Okay, Jakob Poeltl. Okay, great for your offense. Very positive relative to his backups on your defense. And the intangibles are just everything about Yak, right? His screen setting is probably like a cheat code at this point. He's one of the best screeners in the league. He understands the angles. He understands who he's setting the screen for. He understands exactly where, how to seal his man. I can't tell you how many plays where he didn't get a single benefit in the box score, no assist, no rebound, no point, but he pretty much created that shot. And you saw what the Raptors looked like without him yesterday. And I think that if the Raptors eventually do move towards a pivot or a tank, this is the player you're going to have to get rid of because he influences winning in so many brilliant ways. He's a very, very good player. Is he completely worth the $19.5 million? I'd say he's getting pretty close to being worth that. Even though he doesn't shoot well, even though he's had some struggles from the line, I think that those numbers have overall gotten a little bit better. And yeah, I think he's just unlocking, synergy with guards like Davion Mitchell. I think he makes them better. He's made RJ Barrett much better, right? He has. The only negative I would say, and this has nothing to do with Jakob and everything to do with team construction, is I don't necessarily think his fit with Scottie is very good. And I'm not really sure why that is. I'll have to study a little bit more tape, but the synergy with them has not been great in the pick and roll. It hasn't been the most elite. And I do think Scottie's just naturally a little bit better with guys like Boucher and Mogbo, so it slows down your pace a little bit too, like playing a bigger center. He's not nearly as fleet of foot as he was 4 or 5 years ago. So I do think that sometimes is, it leaves him a little bit compromised defensively in terms of what you can do. You can't really switch everything. He has to play drop in most situations. And then when he does get stuck on an island like he did against Tyrese Halliburton, there's blow-bys. And then there's compromises. And I don't necessarily think that he's nearly cleaning up around the rim as well as he used to when he was younger. So, yeah. Neil Lore saying, I hate that someone with such an ugly shot shoots so much better than me. Well, okay. That's funny. That deserved a bit of applause there. Okay. Next up, we got RJ Barrett. Okay. Offensively, very good. The only thing that's been missing offensively has been efficiency. That's it, right? Efficiency and impact. I'd say his playmaking is pretty much carrying 80% of his grade here, right? His playmaking and his relentless attacking. I think he has been a very, very positive, contributor offensively for the Raptors. Defensively, not so much, right? Defensively, he has been at times the worst player on the court for the team. Yesterday, watching him live, it was a revelation to see how often he got picked on and how late he was recovering. He has good moments every now and again. He's clearly trying on most possessions. He's just limited, and I have a hard time believing that someone who's so athletic and so strong, the way that he's able to bully defenders, that he can't be better defensively. I do think the Raptors are sort of throwing him out to the Wolves. They're not really hiding him anywhere. And I do think that they could do a much, much better job of it. And if they were trying to compete, maybe that would be more of a heightened thing on their priority list. Right now, I think the goal is more to make him a better defender, make him slightly better than he is. In terms of the intangibles, he gets a solid B+, man. He's a good character guy for the team. He is overall, like, he comes to play every single night. He clearly cares about winning. I'm not really sure he does a lot of the small things that don't show up in the box score, but I think, again, the intangibles, like the playmaking, right? I think that his ability to drive and get paint touches is probably like the best on the team, right? Like he is like definitely the best driver on the team. And while sometimes the finishes get him in trouble, I do think once he cleans up some of those, we've seen every single player on this team get a little bit better with that stuff. So I do think that that'll be better. Just overall, I wanted to give RJ a higher grade because I certainly do not want to be bearish on a player that is blowing my wildest expectations as a playmaker. I do think that his playmaking deserves that much of an applause. The turnovers have been high. Okay, they're not all good, right? Like and they're like a very specific type of turnover where I can't even look away from what you were trying to do, right? Like sometimes you have a turnover and it's just like, oh, it was a second late, or it's just bad ideas. RJ has a lot of bad ideas on the court. And I'm hoping that with enough film study and enough work, and clearly he's a worker and everyone always talks about how hard he works. I'm hoping with enough film study and, with guys like Darko and Evo and guys like this, that he will get a little bit better and start to read the game, and that maybe the game will just slow down on another level for him and he can cut out some of that stuff. He has been like a lone warrior for the Raptors in a sense too, because he's been driving offense without Immanuel Quickley, without Scottie Barnes, facing off against, the team's best defender, and still, putting up, 30 points, 35 points, 37 points, whatever. So I just think it's hard to go any lower than a B minus, but it's very hard to go higher than a B because of the defense. And I do think that the defense, somewhat compromises the overall picture for him. I would hope that he could just become a little bit more neutral. Yeah. Ochai Agbaji. Okay, offensively, it's really, really difficult to give him anything less than this. I know that he had a 7-game stretch in which he wasn't very good, but everything else, like, don't take it for granted, man. Like 63% true shooting, effective field goal percentage is absolutely insane. It's like you rarely ever see that from any guard or any wing that isn't like a superstar or like a big, right? Like it's just hard to be this efficient offensively, and he's picking his spots and he's providing spacing. I'm curious to see what will happen when teams start to guard him a little bit better. But maybe he's just one of those players that teams are just going to have to leave open a little bit, because especially when Immanuel Quickley, Gradey Dick, RJ Barrett, like when all these guys are back, you have to pick your poison. And if he's always going to be open and he's just going to hit it, well then, welcome to the PJ Tucker club, right? He's absolutely 3-and-D. Now, how good is the D is the question here. I give him a B minus on defense. I don't think his point of attack defense has been exactly what it's been hyped up to be. I think the analytics tell you that. I think the eye test tells you that as well. He's not really a lockdown defender. This is not OG Anunoby or anything like that. He's just halfway competent defensively. I think his great value defensively comes in terms of his versatility, like where he's basically able to guard at the rim, guard on the perimeter, guard the passing lanes, sit in the gaps a little bit, be a little bit of a roamer because of his shot blocking and his ability to, recover. I think he's got room to grow defensively, though. I do. I think, maybe they spent the last summer working on him with his offense. Maybe next summer we need to work with him on defense, because he's certainly athletic enough to be that. Overall, a B feels a little bit low for a player who could arguably be one of the 5 most improved players in the league. But I'm not going to use last year's performance, and say, okay, well, this year's so much better than last year, so you get an A+ by default. He is still a starter in the NBA right now for the vast majority of the season, and he must perform as such. And so, yeah. And I do think that there are some limitations in terms of his dribble creation. It's just luckily for the Raptors, they're not really putting him in positions to expose those weaknesses. Bruno Fernando hasn't played a lot and started out horribly, looked pretty bad last night, but not terrible. I don't think he was by any stretch he was like the worst player on the court last night. That definitely was Chris Boucher and Davion Mitchell and Jamal Shead. But overall, he's been exactly what he's been paid to do. He's a minimum contract center, a big body. He throws his weight around. He gets on the offensive glass like a crazy, mofo. He's very active, sometimes to his detriment. He is a very poor court processor. He does not read the game very well. He often feels late in terms of his reads and understanding where things are happening and what things are happening. But he's had some really high moments. So I'm at a point right now where I would definitely waive him and convert Jameson Battle from a 2-way to a full contract and try to get some years on that and try to get him locked down cheap now before he gets really expensive. But overall, no complaints with Bruno. I started this year out expecting that I was absolutely going to hate watching him play basketball, and I haven't felt that way at all. He gets an overall grade of C-. I mean, I can go as high as C. It's a C-C. That's where I'm at with Bruno. Right? Great offensive rebounder, great hustle big, great, not great screener, but overall, what it is. Garrett Temple, his offense, his defense are irrelevant. It is all about the intangibles, and that's all I care about at this point. Overall, when he has played in the 28 to 32 minutes he's played, he's been fine. He's been perfectly fine. He's a serviceable player, and he's probably better than, 5 players on your roster right now. If you really wanted to win basketball games, he's not that bad a player right now. He's a fine player. Overall, it is, though, however, his intangibles, and every player from Scottie to Jacoby to everybody is benefiting from his wisdom, his maturity, and his sensibleness. Sensibleness, is that a word? Sensibility? Overall, I just think that Garrett Temple influences good culture. And, you can often see him on the bench. He's talking to guys as they come out of games in timeouts. He's always engaged. I just think that he's setting a great example for the young guys. And, one player that did this really well for the Raptors was Thaddeus Young. Thaddeus Young was awesome at doing this for the Raptors, in the sense that Thad would do this thing where, maybe I could just make myself bigger now that I'm not lagging anymore. Thad would do this really cool thing where he created a template for every player to see that you don't have to be a superstar or a star to have a long NBA career. I think Garrett Temple offers a very similar mold, right? Now, obviously, you don't want Jakob Poeltl or Jamal Shead being like, hey, let me be a journeyman. But I think that it's good to see that you can carve out a 10 to 12, 15-year career in the NBA by just doing the little things, by not being a nuisance, by being a hard worker, by hitting your open shots. Maybe this is a model that someone like a Chris Boucher or Davion Mitchell could have followed, some years ago. Because, again, NBA careers are short. You'd be surprised how many NBA careers end in 3 years, 4 years, whatever. So you want guys to just do the work. And if there is some star potential in them, you find it. If there's starter potential, you find it. But overall, you just don't want Malachi Flynn. You don't want Malachi Flynn's. You don't want Justin Champagne's. You don't want Ron Harper's. You don't want players that just don't amount to very much. And the way I would explain it is, every team invests in young players on the back end. So on the front end of investing in a lottery pick, you pay the price. You're probably not going to recoup your money necessarily. I mean, there's some hype around lottery picks. There's, some hoopla around lottery picks, but you're probably not going to recoup your money in terms of like impact on winning. Unless the player is like Victor Wembanyama, in which you recoup your money 10 times over. But most rookies are going to struggle. Paolo struggled. Cade struggled. Jalen Green struggled. Jalen Green's still struggling. So where you make the money back is usually on the back end of that deal. So 2-3 years down the line, as that player molds into a very serviceable mid-level, exception level player, hopefully like a Moses Moody, that's where they become somewhat cheap, and you sort of get the value on the back end of it. And then, of course, you have them under team control. And if they are, signed to a reasonable extension, now you continue to recoup money on it. So I think that overall Garrett Temple has been a solid, he's very involved with the NBA Players Association. He's like a serious grown-up, and I can tell you, having been around players or been around people like Garrett Temple, they are very, very good for your overall development. You're not just trying to grow basketball players. You're trying to grow human beings. You're trying to grow leaders. You're trying to grow community members. You're trying to grow family men. And it's very important that they have someone in their band of brothers that they can look to and say, how do I be a better husband? How can I be a better partner? How can I deal with, my off-court drama better? And he's a good guide for all of that. So overall, he gets B+ for just being a solid person. Immanuel Quickley. Now, this is a bit of a mixed grade because he hasn't played a lot and he's been dealing with a lot of injuries. But nice one saying, glad we live. I'm down bad right now. What's going on, man? Talk to me. Okay. So in terms of Immanuel Quickley, the offense has been a little bit shaky, but I appreciate his process and I appreciate his volume. Overall, if you expect me to be like, Immanuel Quickley's taking too many shots, I really don't care, to be honest. Like, he takes a lot of good shots. He's not really forcing the issue a lot. He's just missing a lot right now. And I do think that he's better than what he's shown so far. I think there were glimpses in that Cleveland game, I think, where he went off for like 13 or 14 points before getting hurt by Darius Garland, of what he can do to unlock the spacing for the Raptors. And there's really nothing behind him. And I think that that's the most important thing. Had Immanuel Quickley played a full season so far, it probably would have helped you a lot more than if Scottie had played a full season or RJ played a full season, because he has no competent backups right now. So, yeah, it's tough. The defense has been probably the part that's not super encouraging for me right now. And, he wasn't a great defender with the Raptors last year, and I really need him to be a positive defender, man. Because if this lineup of RJ, Scottie, Gradey, him, Scottie, that lineup, that core 4-5 is going to work, he has to be great defensively. Like, I don't mean good, because he, unlike Gradey and unlike RJ, he has actually been a good defender in the NBA. Reasonably good. Not great, not he's not Jalen Suggs, but he's been good. So I need him to unlock some of that because the team desperately needs it at the point of attack. Okay. Was that the last one? We got to do 2 more. These are bonuses. And this is Darko Rajaković. And there's no grade offered here, but I just want to talk briefly about Darko. I think Darko has been phenomenal for this team. I really do. I think like his overall approach to development, accountability, everything. I find myself agreeing with 95% of everything he does. Right now, Mr. Canada is saying C+ worth 175 million. I mean, it's a little disingenuous to say that, right? Number one, it's not 175 million dollars this year, so that's like, maybe it's just like one of those big numbers that we can say, oh, like, well, they paid him so much money, $32.5 million. Yeah, he's not worth it right now, but he will be worth it at some point, right? Inflation does tend to work that way. Right now, he's probably like a $22 to $23 million player if things are going right. The hope here is, just like I mentioned with the rookies, that you make the value up on the back end. Now, the deal is flat, so I do think that there's a chance that he kind of grows into that contract, and maybe, like Fred VanVleet did, he might even exceed that contract. Okay, Darko Rajaković. I think overall, like, his preaching defense, like, overall has worked. Like, the Raptors play super hard. Every night they play super hard, and that's partially on him. That's partially on personnel. That's partially on, Scottie and RJ and your leaders. But overall, I think the Raptors have had good process offensively. They just haven't hit a lot of shots. And I've already shown you, like, some of the players that play a ton of minutes for this team are just overwhelmingly negative players who are not real NBA players. So when you're going to have, gaps like that, you're going to be allowed to play box and one against Scottie Barnes or RJ Barrett, and you're going to make them, less efficient. Is that really on him? Or does he have to, does he kind of have to play the roster that he has? If you don't want him to play Davion Mitchell and you don't want him to play Jamal Shead, who do you want him to play at backup point guard? You want him to try out DJ Carton? It's like this team pretty much told Darko, you're going to go through 2 years of hell, but develop and develop and develop. And we're going to talk about that at the end, why it's super important for the Raptors to get more draft picks. But overall, I've been very impressed with Darko, and I think that, it remains to be seen if he's some genius X's and O's coach. But I do suspect that he will be very above average in that sense. And Masai Ujiri, and okay, so overall, Darko's grade A. I give him an A. I think overall, like, you can't really do much better than that. Masai Ujiri, I'm going to give him an A-. I think his scouting has been elite. I think most of the trades that he's made have been very, very good. I think they've just been a little bit late. And I do think sometimes the Raptors get a little bit of analysis paralysis, especially when you talk about, holding the bag with Gary, not necessarily moving off of Fred, etc. But we're just talking specifically this year, maybe holding out a little bit too much hope for what Bruce Brown is worth, maybe not necessarily doing enough to move off of players that will necessarily contribute to meaningless wins at this point. It's hard to read the end from the beginning. It's hard to read the end from the middle, right? You kind of have to see what the final version of this is going to be, because you don't know what is going to happen. You don't know if they're going to trade Boucher, Davion, and Bruce Brown and get like a future first back, and you're going to be like singing his praises in a month. You don't know that. You don't know if he's going to trade Jakob Poeltl, take on a bad contract, and get 2 first-round picks. We don't know that. So overall, if I could say one thing to Masai Ujiri, not that he needs my help to do his job at all, because I admire the hell out of the guy, but this is what I would say. You have a skill. It's a very specific skill, and it makes you a nightmare for teams like LA and Milwaukee and all of the teams in the league, because you have an elite development staff on your team. What you need to do at this point is 2 things. Number one, you need more draft picks. I know it sounds crazy because you have 5 in the next 2 years when you usually have 1.5 to 1 every year, but I think you need more. I think you need more picks, because you've clearly shown what you can do with someone like a Jameson Battle, and you've clearly shown what you can do with a guy like Jamal Shead and Jonathan Mogbo. But as much as what you're pouring into these guys is yielding all these brilliant results, what if you poured that same energy into an Ace Bailey or a Yegor Demon or a Cooper Flagg or a Colin Murray Boyles, players who are both younger, right, and far more naturally talented than some of the players that you're currently developing, right? Now, I'm not willing to necessarily say that the Raptors have done a poor job at this, because clearly they got they got 5 young players on this team last year, 5. And they walked into the draft with 2 picks. It was 19 and 31. And then they walked out with 19, 31, 57, 45, and an undrafted guy who's been, by the way, one of the best rookies in the NBA. So they've done a fantastic job, and Masai deserves all the credit. But don't stop here. Don't stop at the Jameson Battles and Jakob Poeltls and Gradey Dicks of the world, man. Pile more. And, at some point, what you can do is you can always trade and restart it, right? I'm not saying trade Gradey. I'm not saying trade Jacoby. I'm not saying trade any of these guys. I'm saying be open to the idea that as you develop these players, you're obviously doing something with players that other teams are not. You're connecting with them. You're building them up. You're building good habits. You're exhibiting them in a movement offense that's clearly helping them shine. And so their value will go up. It's kind of like how Austin Reeves, right? Like, what was Austin Reeves before he showed up to the Lakers? Not very much. What is he now? He's worth something because they developed him. It's just like the Raptors with Norman Powell. When Norman Powell was tossed away to the Raptors, he was nothing. He was an afterthought. He became something. OG Anunoby was part of that trade as well. The pick that became OG Anunoby, that was Gravis Vasquez. So, the Raptors put Gravis Vasquez, who was a toss away for the Sacramento Kings. This is how the Raptors have basically built the championship core in the first place. They kept trading, and winning these trades is so much more important to me to the final result of winning a championship than it is tanking or, any of that stuff, right? Because, again, you trade for 2 first-round picks right now. Like, even that pick with Indiana, there's a chance that ends up being a lottery pick. Indiana could be a lottery team this year and next year. We don't know. The health of Tyrese Halliburton, the graceful aging of Pascal Siakam. There's so many things that can go wrong for Indiana. So when you factor all those things into the equation, then I do think that it is worth noting that the Raptors, could have an opportunity here to maybe do what OKC did. And that was largely use your cap space or your considerable financial flexibility, as others do not have that. So it's like, let me try to explain this as a 3-prong sort of thing. Number one, you have something other teams want, which is cap flexibility. You have expiring contracts and actual cap space. The Raptors don't have actual cap space in the sense that they're under the cap, but they have space under the tax and they have space under the apron. And that space can be used to basically rent out your cap space to other teams that don't have that flexibility. There are teams like Philly. There are teams like a ton of teams that maybe have a $2 to $3 million, $4 million player that's very valuable, and then maybe a $20 million player who's not very valuable. And so trading away, multiple years or whatever, getting that young asset or even getting a future first round pick or multiple seconds in order to park your cap space. And then, do you know what I mean? So that's the first step. The second thing that you have that they don't have is this elite development staff. So you can do more with their throwaway pieces. So they're tossing away RJ Barrett, the guy who can't shoot and can't play make and isn't consistent, but you are seeing what he can be in your system. So this is like the best thing that the Raptors can do. And this is what they're going to, maybe at least in theory, what they're attempting to do with Davion Mitchell, at least in theory, what they're trying to do with Ochai Agbaji. And they have done with Ochai Agbaji, which is the second draft guys. So I would really, a couple of weeks ago, I talked about trading for Jabari Smith. I talked about trading for Scoot Henderson. Now, those two have been playing a lot better since I made those comments. But maybe you need to go out and find somebody who's a little underperforming. Maybe you need to find a guy like a Josh Minot, because Josh Minot is friggin' awesome, but he's not really playing. Leonard Miller is oozing with potentially. Leonard Miller has potential. At least theoretically, he has potential. Josh Minot has tangible, real upside as a good wing, and Scottie knows him too. These are players who are not playing for Minnesota. Do you have players who could play for Minnesota? Yeah, sure you do, right? So Jack's saying, what about Peyton Watson? Peyton Watson's another really interesting player in Denver. And again, you look at teams like Denver, you look at teams like Sacramento, you look at teams like that are just underperforming around the league, and you're like, man, does a Bruce Brown, Chris Boucher package entice them? Would those guys play on their team? And I think that's a really big part of why you even play Chris Boucher and Davion Mitchell as much, because you could still sell them on the fact that these guys can upgrade. So again, you have cap space, other teams don't have cap space. Park your cap space, take assets back. Use those assets to do something that other teams can't do, which is develop those draft picks into actual players. And then eventually, theoretically, at some point when a star becomes disgruntled, you will be able to trade good starter plus two deep bench pieces plus 1 to 2 first round picks, and you'll be able to get that player. So again, that's the model. The Raptors have followed it to a T before. Hopefully they can do it again. Okay, that's all I had to say about that. And thank you guys again. I want to take a very brief moment now that I'm not laggy, hopefully. I don't know why I was laggy before. This is weird. I don't think it's the internet. I don't know what it is. But anyways, I'm not laggy now. So I'll use this opportunity to just say that Pensare Basketball has always been, at least in my mind, about balance. We want to provide balance. And it started with watching what happened with Vince, what happened with Andrea. And I just feel like sometimes we need the counterpoint. It's essential to debate. It's essential. We have all sides of the coin. I promise you right now that if the media starts being very honest and very fair about Chris Boucher and Davion Mitchell, I don't need to say very much from that point on. Just like when the media stopped questioning Scottie Barnes' work ethic issues, I don't have to talk about Scottie Barnes' work ethic issues. I've decided to just take on this role of being the counterpoint, because I think that very often we end up in a situation where things are either popular or fashionable or not fashionable. Sometimes it's fashionable to pile up on someone. Sometimes it's fashionable to defend somebody. Sometimes it's fashionable to, rip a player. Sometimes it's very popular and everybody wants to hear good things about that player. I think that being a contrarian is difficult because it often gets you unsubs. It certainly does not make you popular. And I think because so many people are bought and paid for by, an example includes, look at the pushback that a certain podcaster received for the Scottie Barnes coverage. He pretty much stopped talking about Scottie for 2 weeks. I'm not saying that's cowardly, because that's what I wanted to happen. But I do want to say, it is a little bit cowardly, isn't it? If what you're saying is true, that Scottie Barnes, in fact, did have work ethic issues, then nothing I say or nothing, your fans are saying or no amount of unsubscribes should really nudge you off that point. I do think that it's important to be contrarian. I do think it's important to be right. And I do think that it's important to be courageous and say things that aren't necessarily popular, but are necessary to the understanding of the game. And we're going to keep doing that. We're going to keep doing that. And I'm going to play the long game. And that's all I've ever wanted to do. I'm not bogged down by, all the people saying your camera looks shitty. I'm like, yep, I know where this is going. I have full faith. And I'm not bogged down by, a bunch of people saying your content has been dry and boring because you're talking about Davion Mitchell so much, because Davion Mitchell is a nice exploration and ability to understand what it takes to be a 6-foot guard. And maybe all of our talking about Davion and all of our talking about Chris Boucher and all of our talking about guys like Gary Trent Jr. have helped us to understand what to look for in a backup guard, in a shooting guard, in a hustle big. I hope that we are doing good. I don't want to be doing bad. So I do want to know that I hope that we are contributing to the overall evolution of basketball knowledge in this city. And we'll continue to do our part towards that end. I will see you guys tomorrow. I'm going to really take tomorrow to clean the shit out of this house and, start to get ready for Christmas, put up our Christmas decorations. Let me know what you guys, what you guys are most looking forward to in terms of this month ahead, in terms of the Raptors. I am going to entertain the idea of going on playback and potentially doing that. It's a pretty cool platform where if you have League Pass, you and I could potentially watch the Raptors game together, and I'll be able to comment on it. I think commenting and entertaining sometimes ruins my appreciation of the game. Like even yesterday, what's funny? I went to the Raptors game against OKC, and I was at the game, and I felt like I was so distracted from the game because there's a conversation going on to my right and a conversation going on. My friend's talking to me, and he's asking me questions, and I feel like I'm missing stuff. So maybe there's a part of me that's just like, maybe I don't want to be on playback for Raptors games because largely I feel like I'm going to miss so much because I'm trying to be entertaining. But yeah, I thought Raptors games were blacked out on League Pass. They might be. I have no idea. I don't have League Pass, so I don't know. I have no idea. Alexander B saying, great live and immaculate video quality, Rob. Yes, thank you very much. And hopefully it wasn't too laggy, but hopefully I was really small when it was laggy. And, you know, again, we want to build this up like we do. We want to make this community better. We want to make the videos better. We want to make the lives better. And thank you guys, all of you, for contributing to that end. Certainly this computer and this mixing board and this camera. None of this is possible without you guys. So thank you so much. And thank you for all your support. And I do want to give a quick shout out to e-transfer. Hang on. I promised I would do this and I must. Hang on 1 second. It is, sorry. Where is it? David. Thank you, David, for the super chat. His comment is, thanks for the thoughtful content, Rob. It's been great company during a move to Ontario where I haven't had time to watch games. I attended the OKC game with my family tonight. Not a competitive matchup, but I was happy to see Shea and the Thunder execute beautiful basketball. I root for Canada's teams, but OKC is Team Canada 2 for me right now. Keep it up. Keep avoiding the hate. The truth will rise. Thank you so much for that super chat, and thank you to all of you for everything that you've done for me. I'm forever indebted. So yeah, peace.